I would say that our driving records are pretty immaculate, right? For the most part.
I would say so.
How many infractions do you think we committed, allegedly trying to get to this movie?
Not enough, apparently, because the cop didn't stop me and save me from watching this film. So, with that said, welcome to this installment of the After the Opening Credits podcast. I'm one half of your host, Hugo the Boss. Hugo got next. Hugo joined by Ghostface, but also joined by my illustrious co-host.
It's your boy Ray Boogie Kahuna. Once again, welcome back to the podcast. It's been a long time coming. We apologize for the layoff. And as you can tell by, some of the props on the set here, we will be reviewing, spoiler-free, Scream 7.
But before we jump into the spoiler-free review of this film, let's get the formalities out the way. Like, comment, subscribe, follow Facebook, Instagram, X, Threads, and TikTok.
If you guys are visual learners like myself and enjoy the visual portion of this podcast, don't be afraid to tune in and catch us on YouTube. Don't be afraid to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date either.
And for all of our audio listeners, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and iHeartRadio, you already know.
So if it wasn't obvious enough, me and my brother are here to not only break down, but review Scream 7, the newest installment of the Scream franchise. A franchise that, in my opinion, is probably one of the more likable and probably better horror franchises that currently exist today. Now, we do plan on answering a couple of the questions here. One question is, does the movie live up to the hype? Been a box office success for the most part. Currently, it just came out not too long ago. Does the film hold up? Does it, maybe let us down a little bit? Does it exceed our expectations? Does the departure of Melissa Barea and Jenna Ortega affect this movie in any way, positively or negatively? I think we just jump right into it.
Yes, indeed, my brother. And I will jump right into it with this question. What did you like and enjoy about this film?
Well, there's two things that, right off the bat, off the top of the head, that I think I really enjoyed in this movie. One, Neve Campbell, a.k.a. Sydney. She's back.
Hello, Sydney.
After, a departure. She wasn't there in the last film, the last installment. Now she's back. And if I'm honest, I think she was probably not only the best actor here in the film, but in some ways, maybe she carried this film a little bit.
Yes.
On her back.
Yes. Which is a little bit of foreshadowing for how the rest of this podcast is going to go, ladies and gentlemen. But continue, my brother.
And the other thing I did like off the rip is the Ghostface character. I noticed I said character and not the killer. We'll get into the killer later. But the character, the figure of Ghostface, I thought the kills were pretty cool. Mm-hmm. I thought the killer himself was pretty brutal. Most of the action sequences, for the most part, they kept me a little locked in. I won't lie to you.
I agree. I thought there was a little bit of an evolution with the actual Ghostface character in this film. And you'll see with, some of the kills and things of that nature and exactly what my brother's referring to. And of course, I'm with my brother here as well, too, in terms of Neve Campbell, getting the rightful bag that she deserved for this franchise, particularly with Jenna Ortega and Melissa Barea, pulling out of the film for political reasons, which we won't get into in this podcast. But just so you guys have some backstory as to why Neve Campbell was called and pretty much required to carry this film. But moving on forward, and this is going to be more of the fun part of this, this breakdown, because we are going to hammer it home a little bit. What were some of the things that you didn't like about this film, my brother?
Well, yeah, it's unfortunate that we have to jump into the negatives immediately because unfortunately there isn't that many more positives. Again, I did like Campbell. I did like the killer.
And no, not Campbell Soup, ladies and gentlemen.
No.
Neve Campbell.
Hello, Sydney. But everything else, this movie was, to put it nicely, a disappointment. I think the cold open, if we're going to start there, usually the Scream franchise movies usually do a cold open into the main, into the main film. This particular cold open felt a little awkward for two reasons. One, watching it felt like it was maybe filmed after the film, in my opinion.
I agree.
And two, throughout the film, because something, major happens in the beginning of this film, in the cold open. And honestly, I feel like it doesn't really pertain or link or is even, it's barely mentioned in the rest of the film.
Correct. It's not like, in the previous films, one of their high school friends or like some acquaintance of Sidney Prescott that gets melted in the beginning of the film. And then it kind of gets the whole school on alert, like, yo, no, did you hear about that killing and blah, 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 and things of that nature. This one kind of fell flat. I agree. I did like how it went down, you know?
Oh, particularly with the, some of the action sequences in there. Yeah, the killing. Because, spoiler alert, this is a Scream movie. There is some killing.
Yes, and the cold open, including Michelle Randolph, and if you are a big fan of Landman, which I am, great show. She is involved in this cold open. They usually get some form of celebrity or at least someone who's tracking very hot at the moment. Very good cold open in terms of the killing and things of that nature. But once again, to my brother's point, I felt like it fell flat in terms of what its relevance with the rest of the film and what it meant to the film in its entirety.
Outside of the cold opening, we could just start with the actors. Weak for the most part, outside of Neve Campbell, unfortunately. And I mean, not to be a bully or to pick on this particular one, but because it could be due to the writing. But Isabel May, the woman who plays Tatum, aka the daughter, I thought, in my opinion, she was the weakest part of this movie. Maybe it's the way they wrote her. Maybe it's the personality, or I don't know. I didn't feel a connection with this character. Not only this character, but most of the cast, I couldn't really get any kind of emotional attachment to. I didn't really find a reason to care about any of these characters for the most part, outside of Sydney. But Tatum in particular stood out the most, in my opinion, to me.
Yeah, I agree with you here. I think Tatum was probably the hardest character to connect with here because her friends were more just like acquaintances, and Tatum being built up as the newer protagonist in this franchise kind of felt like a Jenna Ortega, Melissa Barea replacement, as opposed to something that was freshly thought through, which leads me to the point that I think her character development suffered, not only because of what was happening behind the scenes of this film, but also because of the writing in this film and just the story and the plot getting her to a point where she was believable and relatable and likable, to be frank with you.
Yeah. I mean, the combination of the poor writing, the terrible, in my opinion, I wouldn't say terrible, but it was an unfortunate subplot between the mother and daughter that they had, throughout the film that I feel like didn't really hit home. Some of the decision making was like mind-numbingly like frustrating to see some of these characters make decisions just to move the plot along at some points, or just make like just dumb decisions that I feel like it was a disservice to the audience, almost, like
particularly to the hardcores who have watched this film, like this franchise from Scream 1. At least a lot of those other films had a cohesive, thought out plan in terms of what direction they wanted to go. This is probably the most slapped together film that they've done. Not to sound terrible,
no,
but
the film was definitely going through motions, and I feel like this film, unfortunately, rest in peace to Wes Craven, was definitely missing some of his influence.
Agreed 100%. And yeah, I'm with you here. I think the writing, we talked about this. There were some scenes that there was just an idea that was thought of and it was immediately jumped into without a build-up or without even being properly written. A lot of the writing was extremely cringeworthy. I looked over at my brother multiple times during this film, and usually it's for something epic. And for this film, it was because it was epically bad.
Oh, like I say, it was big old brother moments in this
Oh
one.
my goodness. It was rough. It was a rough one. It was a rough watch. It's hard for me to jump into the likes. And I told you guys we're going to have more of a field day with the dislikes for this film because there's just so much to dislike about this film.
Well, it's unfortunate because I am a fan of this franchise in general, and it's between the poor plot, the basic plot, because the plot is basic. The twists, while I think they were decent in the beginning, became a little predictable towards the end. The killer reveal, because, all Scream movies follow a particular formula, right? Where, there's a plot twist, there's a turn here. We don't know who the killer is, but we might know who the killer is. They're trying to frame this particular person as the killer, and it's really this particular person as the killer. I feel like it was not really thought through. It almost felt like one of those, they had the cast, right? And they were like, hey, which character here would be, the most shocking? And then instead of writing a story, they decided to just, kind of build around what would be most shocking instead. You know, it just felt empty and convoluted and confusing.
Yeah, I agree. It just seems like most of the budget for this film, considering all of the, behind the scenes situations in terms of recasting, all of the budget just went to Nev Campbell and they said, okay, well, we don't need any of this budget to hire good writers, good screenplay, good production. And, I think the other thing that we didn't mention, some of the CGI in this movie was just like...
Yeah, there wasn't that much of it, but yeah, the spots where the CGI was used, it took me out the movie.
I wish, typically we would be wearing these screen masks and doing the whole, film review, both the spoiler-free and the spoiler-filled ones, and the whole getup. But unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, and me and my brother came to this conclusion before the podcast started, it wasn't worthy. I'm sorry. And it was going to be hot in this room wearing this. We would have done it for you guys just for, clips and, to make this enticing. But this is not an enticing film because we went in with some high expectations.
And that's our fault. We, generally, a rule of thumb for me personally is, don't go in with any expectations because that way you're not let down as hard.
But I tell you what, even if I had low expectations, this movie went below them. Yeah. And it sucks to say that. And if you're a fan of C-list films, I'm not going to say B-list because typically most of the films of the last 6 were B at a bare minimum, with the best ones being A+ products. If you're a fan of C-list horror movies, this film works for you. It's just very difficult to see what the product has winded up as. And as you can obviously tell, this, in my opinion at least, is the worst film of the franchise.
Oh, by far. I think that's easily, that's an easy statement to make.
To wrap this up, what are some of your final thoughts on this film? And I guess, how would you rate it if you have a rating?
Well, unfortunately, as much as I like Neve Campbell and the killer in this movie, it's not enough to kind of save the movie from what it is. And what it is unironically what the first Scream movies would have made fun of. This became a parody of its own self.
Yeah.
Because, like every Scream franchise movie, there's always a meta, right? And the meta is like, hey, we're making fun of this or we're poking fun of that. And Scream 7 became a parody of that. It became a stab movie.
Yeah.
Essentially.
I almost would have preferred to watch a stab movie as opposed to this Scream movie.
I feel like this movie took a couple stabs at me, if I'm being completely honest. So I still love the franchise. I still think this is the worst of the franchise. I wouldn't recommend going to the theaters for it. I think if you're a fan, I think you wait until it comes out, maybe in streaming. Maybe you pick it up as a rental. View it there, because I think maybe the only saving or grace of hope that this movie has is that when the next movie comes out, they make fun of this movie.
Just to add on to some of your final thoughts here, I think this is clearly a film that where in the last 2 films, they had a good thing going with Jenna and Melissa, and with them being essentially written off and them moving in a different direction and just scrambling to get a product out to the fans, it totally suffers. This film and this franchise suffer because of it.
Yeah, fresh new characters, fresh new direction. It's nostalgia slop, in my opinion.
Yeah,
it's it almost feels like a cash grab, or they're just trying to bank off nostalgia,
which I believe did kind of work because if I'm correct, this is the biggest opening weekend for a Scream movie ever.
Hey, thank you, Neve Campbell.
Yeah, unfortunately so for the fans. Like I said, if you're a fan of big C-list movies and movies that are not well thought out and kind of just slapped together, once again, to my brother's point, nostalgic slop, then this movie does it for you, man. But if we're being critical of the film and what the previous 6 films delivered, this one completely misses the mark. This is something you should wait for to rent or for a streaming service that you may own. And if it's on a streaming service that you don't own, I would not recommend buying that streaming service to watch this film alone. If you got a whole package deal, maybe you get Sinners and you haven't seen Sinners before and you want to watch, Scream's included in this. Yeah, maybe, but to buy it on its own, like a streaming service by itself on its own based on this film, sorry, man, it's not worth the time. And with that said, I think that wraps up this spoiler-free review. As you guys already know, the spoiler-filled episode will be coming out shortly after this. But until then, Like, comment, subscribe, follow Facebook, Instagram, X, Threads, and TikTok.
Everybody enjoying the visual portion of this podcast. First of all, welcome back. Second of all, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date.
And for all of our audio listeners, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and iHeartRadio, you already know. Love you guys. Holla at you guys. See you for the spoiler-filled episode coming up soon. Enjoy the spoiler-free episode. Drop any comments for anything that we might have missed in this film. It's probably all going to be negative comments, and we will probably be giving out a lot of likes for people who agree with how bad this film was.
And if you do disagree, hey, let us know. But, I mean, you guys might be in the minority. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe he's crazy. Maybe you're crazy.
Love you guys. Holla at you guys. See you next time for the next episode for the spoiler-filled review. Tune in. Thank you for the love and support. Speak soon. Peace. One. Holla. Later.